Well, it's done. It's final. The grass cutting decision is now in place, and that's what we're going to talk about.
We're also going to explore standing orders, what this actually means, and also councillor standards and behaviour. I think it's really important that members of the public know exactly what has been happening in the chamber. Shortly as well, we're going to invite Paul Collins into the podcast today to explore his turn of events. It was quite interesting in the meeting. I'm going to be telling the story largely because Steve actually wasn't here. So I'm going to use this as an opportunity to get Steve up to speed more than anything. But yeah, Steve hit the nail right on the head. We tried with the special motion to rescind and reverse the decision. We failed.
Yeah, not surprisingly, we failed because we knew that we were always up against it because we don't have the numbers within the chamber to force these things through. But we hoped, well, I hoped when I first put all this together, I hoped that Suds would actually see the harm that they were going to do to the town, and they would realise that they now had the opportunity not to do it.
What was great, though, I think, is a unilateral decision cross-party. It wasn't just led by the Conservatives. Labour were involved, our independent councillor was involved. It's just, I really did try to put my point across in stating that just allow your Suds councillors to not feel that they have to be whipped this time. Give them a free vote. Let them vote how they want to. And, well, it was largely surprising. You know, I've got to, where praise is due, you know, if people are loyal, I take that. Loyalty is a good thing to have. But blindly following their leader just because that's a decision and I've made it, it's upsetting, I think is fair.
I would totally agree with you. As you said, I wasn't there. Unfortunately, I was on holiday. But yeah, I mean, having seen some footage provided by Skegness Standard on the internet of the some of the discussions, it appeared to me that the only people really interested in what was going on were ourselves and our supporting colleagues, councillors, and you know, I mean, Suds virtually said nothing.
Yeah, it was quite, well, it wasn't to be expected. I mean, Councillor Danny Brooks, a leader of Suds, was the first to speak, and the only point that he was making was how undemocratic it is to attempt to reverse a decision to which only 10 councillors were present at the time that decision was made, and ultimately it was the mayor, the apolitical mayor, that had the deciding vote. So yeah, for some odd reason in his mind, inviting the chamber to a more thorough discussion about it, where everybody was able to attend, was somehow undemocratic.
It's something I just can't get my head round. I mean, we're going to talk about standing orders a little bit later on, that the regulations we have to abide by. But to say something is undemocratic when all of the required criteria, all the required criteria is met to have a full council meeting, because we only needed 7 people there and there were 10 people there, that means it was fully democratic, and bringing it back to council with a special motion, with 9 councillors signing that special motion, is as democratic and gave everybody the opportunity to speak.
It's in the standing orders. I mean, it's the same standing orders that the same councillor adopted. So how anyone could state that it's undemocratic clearly does not understand their job or their role as a councillor, despite the numerous years and numerous different political persuasions that they've represented. They still can't grasp the concept of, look at the rule book and that's what you can and can't do.
No, absolutely. And, you know, the fact that was probably, from what I understand, and you can put me right if I'm wrong, that was probably the only retort, the only statement that was made about the decision, about how it was made, about why it was made. That was the only statement that, well, it's undemocratic.
That's what he said. Then Councillor Sadler, Julie Sadler, it was her maiden speech, if I believe, from my records. You could tell she was a bit nervous, but she pulled a blinder with it. I mean, it came from the heart. She prepared well, and she delivered a statement that was quite damning, actually. We'll talk about how that links in with standards and behaviour. But she was clearly discussing how that it was clear that the mayor was whipping a member of their party during that said meeting, when that member that asked a question said, "Can I abstain from this? Do I have to vote?" To which the mayor said, "Yes, you need to vote," in the chamber, in the chairman's seat.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that the mayor is now actually denying that's what happened.
Well, that's what happened in the meeting.
I know. Well, I was. I mean,
he denied that happened, and he interrupted Councillor Sadler during her speech. But yeah, she was allowed to continue. Thankfully, it was a bit odd for a mayor to kind of jump in halfway through somebody's time, but nevertheless, yeah, Julie made her point. Councillor Cunnington did speak on it, but he was the only member of SUDS to actually speak, and ironically he was the one that abstained, which I'd love to know the thought process and mentality for that. It's kind of a clear-cut decision in my eyes. We either cut the grass an extra 9 times for a quid,
or we don't.
Yeah,
we don't.
I just want to kind of explain that statement a little, because cut the grass for a quid, it needs a bit more explaining. So what we did is we looked at Band A to Band D properties. As everybody knows, you pay a different amount of council tax based on the value of your property in some arbitrary year in the 90s. And for a Band A, it's less than £1 per year that we wanted the budget, the precept collection to go up by, to be able to afford the additional 9 cuts, which ironically we've already been paying for the last 7 years. It's £1 for a Band A, about £1.60 for a Band D property per year, per household. That's not per week or per month. That's a year.
I know it's. I mean, when you start to break this down into logical little compartments, it becomes more and more crazy that the decision has been made. I mean, the amount of money that it's going to, the amount of money difference that it's going to make for precept payers, for the council taxpayers, is minimal. And the amount of money that is going to be saved is just as minimal. I mean, we're talking about just over £8,000 before any redundancy payments are taken out of it. So in the end, if it is possible that in actual fact, this decision could cost the council money.
Yeah, I mean, the fact is we get paid £11,500 to do it. To my knowledge, the clerk has already factored in the risk associated with that redundancy into the budget. Ultimately, about £8,000, 8.5 is 8,430, I think is the figure. But we don't know what the redundancy is going to be, because you can't pre-assess that. It's unfair, and therefore would be breach of all sorts of HR rules and regulations. So we've got no idea whom is going to be the unfortunate member of our staff that's going to be on their ear at Christmas.
Absolutely, and I mean, just the fact that the council is going to make somebody redundant, to me, is anathema. I
get it. Yeah,
yeah,
I get it.
It's just so sad.
Yeah, for £8,000, we all know that it's a politically motivated decision. That's what I stated in my speech. That I'll never forget that quote. Why cut their grass to make them look good?
Yeah, I know.
It's to make Skegness. It's exactly the point that I made on the night. One point that I didn't make, which I'm a bit disappointed in myself actually, was to do with trying to explain it in a slightly different way. You know, we all work with people of loads of different abilities and backgrounds and things like that, and actually trying to visualize a situation a bit better helps us to understand. And this was a scenario that I was thinking of. So let's imagine now in February, March, April time, where the grass hasn't been cut for all of winter. It's now starting to get the winter blooms come through, all that sort of good stuff. You've now got grass that's 2 foot, 3 foot tall potentially, with weeds, with crisp packets, disposed beer cans, and all that sort of stuff in there. If you had a knock on the door by a contractor, a gardener, somebody of that sort of nature, you're touting for business, and they said, "Excuse me, sir, I'm going around the local area and I'm offering grass cutting services, and I'd like to offer that we'll cut your grass verges outside your house for £1, £1.60. Your house is a bit larger actually, £1.60. Would you take me up on that offer?" You'd first be thinking, £1.60, what, a week, per cut, a month, a year?
I know. I mean, you know,
you would snap his hand off. You'd be like, "I'm really sorry. I'm feeling like I'm robbing you here, mate."
I mean, you know, it is barking mad, really. There's no logic to this, and I'm always thought of myself as being a fairly logical sort of a bloke, and there's no logic to it. It's just amazing that we can actually, after what, a month nearly, we can still be talking about this, and it's still in place. And come next April, we are going to see our grass verges erupt to 2, 3 foot tall, and then maybe 6-10 weeks later, somebody's going to come along with a flail mower and just whip it down.
Yeah, it's crazy. I think we've covered this now quite a bit.
I know, but it deserves it.
The next topic that I wish to discuss, though, is councillor standards, behaviour, and also just how we need to operate as professionals. Now, I hopefully am also joined by Councillor Paul Collins, who's on the line. Sorry for keeping you waiting, Paul. Are you with us?
Yeah, I'm here.
Oh, thank you so very much for joining us. We've just had quite a lengthy debate. You know what Steve's like, just about that meeting. We were a bit confused as to one councillor's abstention, but yeah, we're not talking about that just now. We're talking about the decision. Now, during Councillor Sadler's speech, which, you know, you could tell she was quite nervous, the mayor disputed profusely that he was whipping. What's your opinion on that?
Well, from my recollection is the councillor in question looked at the mayor and said, "Can I abstain?" Which clearly she could, because anyone can. You know, any councillor can abstain. And he looked at her and mouthed the words "no" at her a number of times and looked quite angry.
And how anybody can deny that retrospectively?
You know, that's what I saw. You know.
If I can just interject, Paul, and say that is exactly what I saw. The answer that the mayor gave to her was no, no, no.
Yeah, a number of times. And I think it was, you know, given that the councillor involved is a new councillor as well, I feel that it's, you know, it appeared, you know, sort of quite, well, maybe intimidatory is the wrong word, but
distasteful.
Yeah, I don't know why you do it, to be honest. I mean,
well, we know why. They needed the vote.
Well, they did, yeah. But at the end of the day, you know, well, we've heard a lot from particularly the SUDS leader about democracy. And, you know, at the end of the day, I'll accept the vote that took place and I'll accept the decision that was made, you know. But they should have been prepared to do the same. And there isn't a place really, I don't think, on the town council for this, group voting and whipping and from a group of people who claim to be non-political, it's very political.
Yeah, it's almost laughable. That was kind of why in the previous episode of this podcast, we had to kind of explore and try to explain what non-political and apolitical actually means. I don't actually think they understand. And I don't mean that in a disrespectful way.
No.
You can't whip people and then be non-political.
I mean, I've been very, sort of dismayed by the lack of professionalism amongst some of the councillors. I know you don't need to be professional to be a councillor, and it should be open to people from all walks of life. It really should.
Yeah.
But it's just the sort of standards of behaviour that you become, you think, oh, that's disappointing when, you've got people swearing and so on. It's just really disappointing, to be honest.
Yeah, I partly think that on that fateful management committee, when Councillor Gabatas decided to walk out after it was called back into private session, I actually thought that potentially he thought the meeting had been drawn to a conclusion. And, the mayor did bring him back in and we had a bit of a break thereafter. But yeah, that's kind of...
I thought he thought that. He was off. He was off for a pint, wasn't he? or whatever he does. He was gone.
Yeah, you're quite right. A level of professionalism should be fundamental in whatever. It doesn't matter what political party we're around. When I first, because we haven't really had a good chance to have a chat before, but this is my third term as a councillor, so I'm pretty new to it. I joined a councillor when I was 24, I think it was, and at the time, we all even in the same parties, we all kind of disagreed and agreed with each other, and that was fine. We could all articulate our point. And there was no real whipping going on because there was not that direct overlord majority. It could sway either way. That was when UKIP was obviously quite kipping. But yeah, you could have that confidence to have that conversation. And if you disagreed with your colleagues in the same party, that's absolutely fine. That's what you were elected to do. And it was really refreshing. What do you think it's going to take for that to come back? Or do you think it can ever come back?
Well, I don't know if it'll ever come back or not, but I think I think that it would take we need more independent councillors, I think, and we need more independently minded councillors.
Yeah,
perhaps that's the word we're looking for, and I think that eventually, I think some of the SUDS councillors will probably get sick of being told what to do. And I think they'll either pack it in, or they'll strike out on their own as independent, or they'll join one of the other parties. Because I think they know it's just not working out that well, is it? And
they do have a good mix. In their defence, credits where credit's due. They do have a good mix. There are some passionate and councillors with common sense. It's just not led by the right person at times, I think.
I think I'd agree with you on that wholeheartedly. I think it's in the leadership where there's a big gap, to be honest. And I think it's because it's like the grass cutting. And I know you've discussed it, but there isn't. You think you could understand what had happened if they had a single really good reason for wanting to do the thing that they've done. So, if they can say, oh, well, it's really going to save the town a lot of money. Well, it isn't. It's really going to help the bumblebees. Well, that's, they're just playing a game with that one because they're not bothered about that.
It's comical. I can't believe that email that went round, trying to justify their decision by stating it's for wildlife, and then coming up with a motion in the Wednesday's council meeting, basically saying how money that's supposed to be for the development of town assets should now be used for ongoing revenue costs of cutting grass, to which there isn't any down Lumley Road for a start. I mean, it's just What's your thoughts, Steve?
Yeah, I've like I said, I'm a fairly logical sort of a bloke, and maybe I see things too black and white. But for my mind, Paul's hit the nail absolutely on the head. If they could have come up with one good reason for doing this, then you could start to think, well, maybe we are actually on the right lines by doing it. But that's not the case, and I really don't know what else to say about it.
Yeah, I also like your point, Paul, about independently minded councillors. I think that's valid, and any good party of any nature should be in a confident situation where they trust the values of their councillors, they trust the competencies of them, and will allow their decisions to hold their own weight. But the fact is, we've got a group of people that perhaps don't have those competencies.
I think, well, I'm inclined to think, well, you just carry on, because they're not going to be thanked by the electorate for it. The next time they get to the polls, they're not going to thank them for it. They're not going to thank them for making the town council political. They're not going to thank them when the grass is a foot high all the way around the streets leading into Skegness. They're not going to thank them for that. So in a way, I'm inclined to say, oh, well, you just carry on with it then.
Yeah, we're going to. I think
people know what's happening.
We're all going to make people accountable, because there's always that age-old expression: you're only as good as your best opposition, and we will strive for the very best for the residents, because it's just the right thing to do, isn't it? Really.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, they'll lose all the arguments and they win all the votes.
Well, would they? Because in the last election at town council level, they got, I think it's 26% fewer votes than they did last time.
Yeah, and I think, but I have a number of, and I believe that the last time it was because they had a lot to say about the asylum seekers in a lot of different ways. They'd said it amongst the membership, and I actually think that whilst there was a lot of loud noise about the asylum seekers in the town, most people were quite sort of, well, I feel sorry for them. If they don't make a problem for me, I'm not going to make a problem for them. And I think they actually lost votes because of that issue. I don't know for sure, because who can know something like that?
Yeah, they keep bringing up the streetlight situation, but the reality was, at the time, Lincolnshire County Council, we're talking 2017 now, were facing monumental budget cuts from central government, which we all know is completely unfair. We've banged on about fairer funding for the Shire counties, and our MP has been leading that to a certain extent as well. But they had an ultimate decision to make, and they would criticise Lincolnshire County Council so much about turning off the streetlights at that time. And there's always been an element of confusion, because they have never been switched off on the foreshore. They have never been switched off near residential care homes or junctions or any location where there's a streetlight. They're not talking about that, because obviously that doesn't beat their agenda. The fact is, they had to make the cut. Skegness Town Council did not have to stop the grass cutting, so it would be completely ironic for them to be bashing any other council at this stage when they have done completely the same thing. It's hypocrisy.
I think the street lights, I think is quite a tricky one for us to discuss. I think in a way, because I think the agenda, so far as the people of Skegness is concerned, I think the agenda on the street lighting's probably moved on. Yeah. I think I disagree and say that I don't think Lincolnshire County Council had to make those cuts, because you have a choice, don't you? You've got a whole range of things you can do to save money, and you don't have to turn the street lights off. But the other thing I would say is I've actually I think we have an awful lot of light pollution in Skegness. I think that if you ever try and look at the northern lights from the southern side of town, you have no chance at all because of all all the lights that there are. And I think that there are environmental reasons for
the reality is that
not having, you know.
yeah, most county councils had to do the same thing. There's only a handful that chose not to.
Yeah, but they
what do you
chose not
think,
to.
Steve?
Well, there's a very, very simple answer to this streetlight, and that is to follow the policy that the county council have put into place to have them switched on again through the night. And the first thing you need to do is prove that your local residents want that to happen. And the only way to do that is to have a referendum amongst all, so that all council taxpayers can have the opportunity to have their say. If they say we want them back on, then you go along and you actually say to the county council, right, we want them on, what's the cost going to be? And they will tell us. Well, if they say no, if the people of the town say no, then that's an end of it, Paul. Do you not agree?
Yeah. Oh, it is, yeah. I mean, it's a shame that they didn't sort of take that opportunity and put it in with the vote over the town plan that happened. I think was it just before the election.
Well, there's a perfectly good opportunity to do that come the Lincolnshire County Council elections, because they've got that date well and truly penciled in their diary by now, and and they decided to not comply with Councillor Adair's recommendation to do that. But the reality is, I'm sure you're aware, but the local Conservative groups have surveyed pretty much the entirety of Skegness on multiple occasions about this topic. We've got the data, we've got the mandate, we know from those responses who, and there's a good chunk that did want them on. We're talking 60 odd % wanted them on from my memory. But most of that 60% were not prepared to pay any more for it.
In fairness, there's a fair proportion of people who wouldn't have responded to a Conservative survey.
I get it.
So I'm not doubting your figures, but I'm doubting the group that they're drawn from a cross selection of the town.
I 100% hear from a statistical point of view, but I mean, it's
the only way to actually sort this out is to have a referendum and give the people the voice that they are entitled to make a decision. So why can't we do it?
But one would argue, Steve, and I'm agreeing with you, but one would argue that residents elect people to follow their judgment, and a referendum does, of course, cost money. Are people that bothered? I don't know.
And I think that's part of the question, because I had when I decided to become independent, some people said, well, you should stand for election again as an independent. But as we know, I'd be quite happy to do that. But at the end of the day, it cost the town £10,000, which is, it's a half a person's salary, isn't it? You know what I mean?
But last time we asked Lincolnshire County Council, it was about £400,000 the bill for 10 years to put the lights on. So, 40 grand a year. There was no terms discussed as to how that would have worked, because the council just decided at the time not to pursue. Would local residents be willing to put a 40 grand fee into their precept? Not a chance. I don't think they would.
Well, I wouldn't worry. To be honest, to offer this to you, I wouldn't worry about what Suds are saying, because I don't think they're going to do very well going into the future. With the way they behave.
Yeah, I'm kind of in agreement. I'd just like to thank you so very much, Paul, for joining us in today's Skegness political discussion. We do want to continue this. We've had pretty good feedback from, even members of their own party have been commenting on it. So it's clearly
Oh, oh well, good. Give us a shout another time if you want any.
Yeah, I mean, our objective is quite clear. We want to try and make local politics more accessible, not just to talking about precepts and standing orders and section 50 whatevers and it needs to be, you know, pounds and pence that people understand. And just to reiterate, if you've got any question at all that you would like us to discuss in any future episodes, or if you'd like to even join us on a future episode, just drop us an email. That's hello@spdpodcast.co.uk.
All the best, Paul. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you very much for joining us in this episode, and we look forward to your attendance next time. Bye.
Yep. Bye-bye.